Next, we want to move into our next presentation by Dean Waller, discussing the effects of digitization on supply chain management. Matthew Waller is the Dean of the Walton College of Business at the University of Arkansas. He's an inventor and holds several patents. His opinion pieces have appeared in Wall Street Journal Asia and Financial Times, and has co-authored numerous books on supply chain management. Welcome, Dean Waller.
Thank you, Matt. Nice to be here. Zoom, thanks for putting this on. That last panel was absolutely terrific. I really enjoyed hearing those remarks, very insightful. Um, so, you know, prior to the pandemic, most companies had a digitalization plan or strategy, but many weren't very far along in terms of implementation. And as we know, the pandemic has really sped up the rollout of these plans. And this has resulted in millions of forced experiments, which forced experiments is a phrase I've been using frequently lately. And I think um, meetings like we're having right now with Zoom um, are particularly valuable. There were more experiments in the past year in logistics and supply chain management than there probably have been in the past 50 years combined, if you think about it. When I talk about these forced experiments, right, companies already had plans to roll out digitalization of all kinds of things, and they had strategies for it, but they were doing it at a snail's pace. The pandemic really allowed for something like a forced agile approach to experimenting with new approaches to digitalization. And so many have had, because you look at grocers, grocers had to create processes for pickup and delivery. Restaurants and apparel shops had to go online to survive. Within the area of logistics and supply chain, people were trying all kinds of things. The logistics industry has really been hit in many different directions, um, in many different ways that no one could have anticipated. And, you know, as new technologies and data and information become available as a result of all this, it'll be important for companies to not simply say, okay, we've got these new processes. And I think really what's probably happened more than anything from a forced experimentation process is that new processes have been created. Um, New technologies that maybe didn't get a foothold in industry are being experimented with as well. And many new companies are creating technologies to enable these new processes. But I think the danger is it reminds me of the dot-com era a bit. Um, Rather than saying, you know, how can we take these new technologies and automate these processes we've invented through this forced experimentation that's been created by COVID, the question needs to be, given these technologies, what should our processes be? And really to look at it from a customer's perspective. I think sometimes in logistics and supply chain management, we're a little bit too quick to look at it from more of a process perspective and not to take into account the end customer and also the users of the processes and the technologies. And then thinking about it from a shipper's perspective, you know, the most successful shippers in terms of logistics are ones that manage the flow and storage of their freight in a more holistic manner. So, you know, the previous panel, especially at the end, um, I think the discussion there is really relevant here because successful shippers manage logistics in a more holistic manner, because you've got to minimize your total costs. You can't just minimize transportation costs or inventory costs or labor costs or the cost of customer service failures like stockouts and lost sales. But there's trade offs amongst those costs, and they have to be managed together. The problem, well, the approach to overcoming the trade off is really technology and process innovation. And that's really what we're talking about here. But they have to be done in a way that really takes into account the total cost. So I think that going forward, the technologies that are most successful will be the ones that enable the shippers to balance those costs. We've done some econometric studies that have been published in Transportation Journal that show that firms in the US economy, shippers, are not balancing those costs as effectively as they should be. So I'm really excited to hear what you all are talking about. And again, I really appreciated that last panel. That was really terrific. I wish you a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Waller. We appreciate your presentation. And as we all know, this pandemic has really accelerated digitization. And at the core, it's this topic that we've been talking about today about collaboration. It's about fragmentation and defragmenting the logistics industry, whether it's capacity, whether it's systems, whether it's data flows. There's a number of different pieces that we can tackle together. So we appreciate your piece there.